She arrived on time, not out of trust, but because after canceling on 3 others, she thought this time, why not give it a try? The app promised John 34 architect loves old movies, adores dogs. His texts carried the weight of someone who'd been hurt before polite, slightly guarded, always asking, "Have you eaten yet?" A kind of kindness that cut like a velvet-sheathed blade. The apartment in Baldwin, a quiet Missouri suburb, was small but tidy. Warm lighting, a vanilla-scented candle, and soft jazz humming in the background, like a stage set for an evening without complications. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her. No click of a lock. No chime of a bell. Just, it didn't open again. If you think the scariest thing is a stranger, think again. The scariest thing is a stranger who knows exactly what you want to hear. Who knows where to draw the line at kindness. Who knows when to offer a glass of wine and when to pull back from the conversation, just enough to make you want to draw them in again. In today's story, you'll meet a man named Adam Rafe, but no one ever called him that. They knew him only as John, the man who made at least 5 women in Missouri believe they were loved. Until they found themselves in a stranger's apartment, their phones dead, their memories fractured like a dream someone else had edited. This isn't just a story about a man hiding behind a fake name on a dating app. It's about a system that lets false faces slip into other people's lives and vanish without leaving a single traceable thread. You might think I'm too sharp. I'd never fall for it. But picture this. You're a single woman living alone believing a dating app is the safest way to connect without getting hurt out there in the world. Would you see what's waiting for you? When someone says, "You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm the safest person you'll ever meet. Let me take you back to the night it all began." Apartment 24B, Manchester Road, the hallway light flickering twice before the first incident was reported. Only, no one believed it, because the woman who came forward had no proof, just a feeling that something had been taken from her, something no one could name. The first woman didn't file a report right away, not because she wasn't sure what happened, but because what happened didn't look like anything the police were trained to believe. Her name was Elise, 29, a freelance marketer living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the west side of St. Louis County. She'd been on the dating app for 3 years, 9 meetups. Nothing had ever made her feel unsafe. Until John. He showed up 12 minutes late, wearing a dark turtleneck, leather shoes, smiling with his mouth, but not his eyes. Their conversation was slow. Polite. He didn't flirt. He listened. He didn't compliment her clothes, only her opinions. And when he laughed, it sounded like a man practicing empathy the way others practice the piano. He said he was an architect, worked alone from home, fewer clients, but more freedom, and he believed real connections only happened off-screen. Elise smiled. She thought finally someone who gets it. Someone who didn't try to impress her, but mirrored her. They drank wine. She remembered pouring her own glass. He never touched her drink, never touched his phone. Just once he leaned forward and asked, "If you could forget one thing about yourself, what would it be?" It was just a joke, he said. But later that question haunted her. Because in the hours that followed, Elise couldn't remember if she'd said yes or no or anything at all. She remembered standing, then not standing, then waking up with her tights on backward, one earring gone, and a headache pulsing behind her right eye like a fire alarm trapped under her skin. Her phone was dead. The apartment was spotless. Her wallet untouched. And John was gone. Elise didn't scream. She didn't call 911. She sat in the corner of her kitchen staring at the pattern on the tile floor for over an hour, trying to decide, was this her fault Or had she just met someone who knew exactly where the line was and how to make her question whether it had even been crossed? It took Elise 4 days to speak up. Not to the police, but to a friend. A co-worker named June who'd once said, "If something happens, I want to be the one you text, not the one you explain it all to months later." That's exactly what Elise did. The message was short. "Hey, I think something weird happened with a guy I met last week. I don't know what to do." June called immediately. And as Elise tried to explain, halting fragmented the story, spilling out like a window already cracked. June said the thing Elise didn't know she needed to hear. "You're not crazy. You're just processing a crime that doesn't leave bruises." The police weren't much help. They asked the standard questions. Did he assault you? Was alcohol involved? Did you say no? Did you invite him into your apartment? Each question landed like a fingerprint, not on him, but on her. One officer flipped through her intake form and said, "It's hard to prove anything without physical resistance. These cases don't really go anywhere." But Elise had left one thing most victims don't realize: they have screenshots. From 3 days earlier, a message from John time-stamped saying, "You seemed a little out of it last night. Hope you're okay." It didn't say what happened, but it said something happened. June urged Elise to post anonymously on a women's safety forum just to warn others. The post went up at 2:47 a.m. titled, "Met a guy on a dating app named John. Something's not right. Be careful." By morning, there were 3 replies. By that night, there were 12. All women. All had met John. Different times. Different versions of the same story. Wine. Thoughtful questions. Hazy memories. Silence. Shame. And in one case, a woman named Becca, a real ER visit. She'd woken up disoriented and bleeding, but no one believed her because her toxicology report came back clean. That's when June started connecting the dots and did what Elise couldn't. She reported the username not to the police, but to the dating app itself. And when she did, the profile was gone. Deleted. Not suspended. Not under review. Just gone like it had never existed. Which begs the real question: who deleted it, John, or someone on the inside? Because when the police finally opened an investigation, the IP addresses were wiped. The name Adam Rafe was still nowhere in the records. And the only trace left of him was 5 women and a pattern no one wanted to admit had a name. Her name was Becca Tran. She didn't see Elise's post until the 3rd day it was up, and when she did, she froze, not because she didn't believe it, but because she already knew it was true. Becca had met John 2 months earlier. Same smile. Same line about loving slow jazz and being done with games. They talked for 3 days on the app, then moved to texting. Then he invited her over, not pushy, not creepy, just normal. Like someone who'd done it before. She remembered the apartment most. It was too perfect. No clutter. No dishes. The couch dead center. Blinds drawn. A single photo on the shelf of a dog, not a person. "My best friend," he said. "She passed last year. Lung cancer. I miss her more than any person." Becca had laughed politely, but later that line chilled her, because it sounded rehearsed and too perfectly timed. They drank wine. She remembered laughing, then lying on the couch. Then the overhead light flickered once, just once, like something inside the walls was watching. She didn't remember the rest. Hours later, she woke up on the bedroom floor. Jean's half-zipped bra twisted, and a taste in her mouth she couldn't name. No bruises, no torn clothes, no one to call, and worst of all, no certainty. Just fragments. The sound of Velcro. A cold hand on her stomach. the weight of silence pressing on her chest like a second body. At the ER, they ran tests. No findings, toxicology clean, no injuries consistent with assault. The nurse avoided eye contact when she said it. The officer didn't take notes. Becca left with a diagnosis of dissociative fatigue, as if the only thing broken was her sense of time. She didn't tell anyone. She buried it. Until Elise's post appeared, and the words she'd choked on 2 months ago finally matched someone else's story. She messaged anonymously in the thread, then created a burner email, then did what none of them had done yet. She called the Baldwin Police Department and carefully asked if there were any other reports about a man named John in a unit near Manchester Road. The woman on the phone went quiet for a moment, then said, "Ma'am, I'm going to transfer you to Detective Harlan. He may have some questions for you." And that was the first moment Becca realized someone was listening, and someone somewhere was starting to count. Detective Mason Harlan had seen a lot in his 23 years. But this case, these eerily identical, unprovable stories, felt different. It wasn't just the lack of evidence. It was the lack of clarity. Every woman recounted a version of the same night. A man named John. An apartment too tidy. A conversation too smooth. A blackout that didn't add up to alcohol. And a silence that felt deliberate. No break-ins, no theft, no threats, just women waking up, confused, ashamed, and alone, wondering if they'd imagined the worst thing that ever happened to them. Harlan started with the dating app. He subpoenaed their logs, demanding every trace of activity tied to the alias John M. The company pushed back, citing privacy policies. Then days later sent an email stating, "The account has been permanently deleted. No data is recoverable." That wasn't true. Every system keeps something. But Harlan knew what the message really meant. They didn't want to get involved, because involvement implied liability. So he went old school. He went straight to the apartment unit 24B Manchester Road. The leasing office said it was rented under a different name, Ethan Lowell. Signed in person. Paid in full, month to month. Harlan ran the ID through the DMV database. Fake. The photo didn't match. The license was a clean forgery, high-end work. But what did match was the face caught on a hallway camera behind the building, visible for 4 seconds just once when he forgot to duck the lens. Sharp jawline, short black hair, black hoodie, and a half smirk, like he knew no one would catch him. Harlan cross-referenced missing persons, restraining orders, and prior aliases. And finally, he found something. A 2017 arrest in Illinois. Same face, different name, different app. The charge, suspicious behavior with intent to deceive. He'd posed as a volunteer at a women's shelter. No conviction, no jail time, just a sealed record, and a system that forgot him the moment the ink dried. But Harlan didn't forget. He reopened the file, and this time he noticed something buried in the original case notes. Known to use multiple online aliases, Adam R. Malik, A. Jonah K., and John. Exhibits grooming behavior. Noted psychological manipulation. No DNA on file. It was the first time anyone said his real name out loud. Who was Adam Rafe? Back at the station, Harlan pulled out a whiteboard, wrote 6 names across the top, Elise, Becca, and 4 Jane Does from scattered threads and posts. Below he drew lines connecting them, same app, same pattern, same night. Then he circled one in red, stepped back, and said what everyone in the room was afraid to voice. "We're not looking at a misunderstanding. We're looking at a system failure. This guy didn't disappear because he was careful. He disappeared because we let him." The problem with predators like Adam Rafe isn't just what they do. It's how many cracks they know how to slip through and how easily they learn to vanish behind polite smiles and user agreements. By the time Harlan had a working timeline, Adam was gone. Not fled, just quietly relocated. The Baldwin apartment had been vacated 2 weeks earlier. Spotless. No fingerprints. No hairs. No trace on the Wi-Fi router. The leasing office remembered him as soft-spoken, always paid in cash. Harlan turned to the digital trail. He started sifting through complaint logs on dating forums, Reddit threads, Discord servers for women's safety networks. It was like watching a map of trauma bloom in slow motion. Pittsburgh, Des Moines, Tucson, St. Paul, same pattern, different cities, different names. The women never reported him the same way, because they didn't always know what to report. Some said they woke up anxious. Others blacked out, but weren't drunk. One woman in Minnesota wrote, "He never touched me. But the next day I felt like I was in a room with no oxygen, and I didn't know how I'd gotten there." That line stuck with Harlan. He reached out to the FBI. He knew it was a long shot, but Adam had crossed state lines. And more importantly, he'd left a behavioral signature. What started as a guy using fake names on a dating app had become a pattern of coercive behavior designed to bypass consent without ever seeming violent. That kind of precision, it required planning. And somewhere along the line, someone had to have seen something. Turns out, someone had. A barista at a coffee shop near Baldwin. She remembered Adam because he never ordered the same drink twice. "He told me routines make people lazy," she said. "He liked practicing being someone new." Said it kept him sharp. She also remembered him leaving a USB drive at the counter once. 5 minutes later, he came back for it. Voice panicked something she'd never heard from him before. He offered her a 20. She refused, but she'd looked at the drive before he returned. Inside, nothing illegal, but cold. Dozens of folders, each labeled with a woman's name. Inside each folder, screenshots, voice memos, transcribed conversations. One folder read, "Elise, compliant, predictable insecurity." Another, "Becca, escalation risk, final contact." The barista never told anyone until she saw the police flyer and anonymous hotline. She left a voicemail. Harlan got the call, and now for the first time he had more than testimony. He had evidence of predatory intent. The folders weren't trophies. They were case files. Each woman a profile dissected like a marker in a long game of manipulation. He wasn't dating. He was documenting, learning, optimizing. And the scariest part, he was good at it. The USB changed everything. It wasn't just evidence. It was a blueprint. For the first time, investigators could see Adam Rafe not as a string of random coincidences or scattered accusations, but as a planner, a man with a method and a mind engineered to exploit vulnerabilities like a formula. Detective Harlan sent the drive to forensics. His team decrypted metadata embedded in the audio files. They found recording dates, GPS pings, even edit timestamps, all pointing to one conclusion. These weren't chance encounters. They were staged rehearsals. He scouted, he selected, he documented, he refined, like he was running A/B tests on human boundaries. One voice memo was particularly damning. It was labeled Protocol, Chash and Phase 1, Establish Control via Validation. It read like a training manual. Mirror their interests. Echo small insecurities but soothe them. Make them feel seen but never fully known. Avoid overt dominance. Subtle emotional positioning works better. Guilt is softer than fear. And at the bottom, trust builds faster when they think they're leading the conversation. The files listed at least 18 women by name, 10 others by initials only, and at least 6 who never surfaced their details, existing only in folders, photos, voice message snippets, Spotify playlists. Every woman was categorized, not by what she wore, not by what she did, but by how easily Adam could bypass her defenses without tripping her nervous system's alarms. But there was a problem. The USB was found in a public place. Its contents were tied to the name John, and the drive itself clean. No fingerprints, no biometric link to Adam Rafe. In court, that meant not enough. So Harlan made a choice. He went public. The department issued a press release not detailed, but specific enough to jog memories. We are currently investigating an individual suspected of using dating apps under false identities to exploit and manipulate women across multiple states. If you believe you have encountered this person, please contact us. The post went up at 3:05 p.m. on a Thursday. By midnight, they had 42 voicemails. By the next morning, 81 emails, dozens of screenshots, all versions of John, each one slightly different, but all leading to the same thing, the same phrases, the same apartment layout, the same kind of glassware, the same silence afterward. One woman left a voicemail Harlan never forgot. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "I don't know if what happened to me counts. I let him in. I kissed him first. But then, I couldn't breathe. And when I tried to say stop, it felt like he'd already left the room. Like he wasn't even there anymore." She paused, then added, "He didn't hurt me. He just took something. And now I don't know which part of me it was." That voicemail was played in a closed briefing between local law enforcement and a federal task force. A silence fell. Then a female agent said, "He's not assaulting them in the way we're trained to recognize. He's bypassing consent through psychological euthanasia. He's not leaving bruises. He's leaving doubt." And finally, someone said what no one wanted to. "That's worse, because you can't bandage doubt, and it doesn't show up on a scan." Her name was Maya Ellison, and she wasn't supposed to come forward. She had a steady job, a fiancé, a family who still believed private things should stay that way. But she also had a voice memo. And more than that, she had what no one else had dared to say, even anonymously: "I know exactly what he did." And I can tell you the moment it started. Maya met John in May. He said he was in town temporarily. A consultant. They met on a Tuesday, had coffee on Thursday, dinner on Saturday. No pressure, no red flags. He didn't touch her at dinner. He asked about her job, her brother's health, her favorite childhood memory. He said, "You're so honest with me. Like someone who sees more than she says." That line made her blush. Now it makes her want to shatter glass. She went back to his apartment because it felt natural, not sexual, not aggressive, just simple. But what happened next was like time stopped. He never asked for anything. He never forced. He just created a room so quiet, so bright, so emotionally heavy that when Maya found herself half undressed on the floor, she couldn't tell if it had happened to her or if she'd quietly walked into it herself. And then she realized that was the trick. He never moved the pieces. He made you move them, and then made you wonder if you were even playing a game at all. After that night, she didn't go to the police. She went to therapy. She called it a weird night. Her therapist called it a controlled emotional environment. Her journal just called it blank pages. For months, she said nothing, until she heard Elise's story on a podcast, then Becca's name on a blog, and finally, the words that unlocked her memory: "He just took something. And now I don't know which part of me it was." That was her. So she pulled out her old phone, the one she'd had before upgrading, and she found a single voice memo from that night. She didn't even remember hitting record. The audio was 37 seconds long. You hear Maya's voice, slow, detached, unsteady. You hear John Adam ask, "How do you feel?" and Maya answers, kind of, "Not here." Then silence, followed by Adam's whisper, "That's how I know I'm doing it right." She turned the file over to Detective Harlan, and then she said the 6 words that shifted the investigation from a tangle of survivor stories into a prosecutable offense. "I'll testify. On record. In court." And just like that, the silence Adam had relied on for years cracked. It wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about pattern recognition. Adam didn't misunderstand consent. He erased it. One breath at a time. One compliment at a time. One woman at a time. And now one voice, clear, unwavering, was about to say what he couldn't erase. "He did this to me, and I remember everything he thought I wouldn't." Fawn 8. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and cold air conditioning, too clean, too bright, too indifferent. Maya Ellison sat at the witness stand, palms pressed hard against her thighs, trying not to tremble. Not from fear, but from restraint. She'd waited 8 months for this moment. 8 months of legal back and forth, pre-trial hearings and strategy meetings, where attorneys had warned her kindly but firmly, "He'll never say you said no. He'll say you didn't say anything at all." Adam Rafe sat 30 feet away. His hair was neatly trimmed, a jacket too stiff. He looked exactly like the kind of man who'd volunteer at shelters, hold doors open, and smile at baristas when his name was called. The prosecutor opened with facts, not emotion, not empathy, just hard, quiet truths. 5 confirmed victims, dozens of matching app accounts, the USB, a folder labeled Maya, responsive but uncertain, and the voice memo. Then they played it in full, unedited, no commentary. The jury sat still as the room filled with Maya's distant voice. Kind of, "Not here." And Adam's whisper, "That's how I know I'm doing it right." The defense objected, argued it was taken out of context, said Adam was referring to a shared emotional state, not intent. But the room had shifted. You could feel it, the tension in every shoulder, an unspoken question forming in the jurors' eyes. What kind of man thinks that's doing it right? Then came the cross-examination. The defense attorney was calm, almost apologetic. He called Maya Ms. Ellison in a voice like silk over a blade. "Ms. Ellison, you entered the defendant's apartment willingly. You both drank wine together. You didn't say, 'Stop.' You didn't scream, each question a reminder of how the system was built. Not to understand trauma, but to dissect it until it no longer held weight." Maya answered every question without flinching. But when asked, "Did you say no?" she replied, "I didn't say no. I didn't say anything. Because by the time I realized something was happening, it had already happened." The courtroom went silent. Even the defense attorney paused. Maya leaned forward, her voice clear. Silence isn't consent. Confusion isn't consent. Disappearing inside yourself doesn't mean someone else gets to take what's left. When she stepped down, the prosecutor didn't smile, didn't nod. He just rested his hand on the table for a moment, palm open. A signal. "We heard you. And this time we won't forget. The trial wasn't over. There would be expert witnesses, challenges to the admissibility of digital evidence, debates over intent versus perception." But Maya had taken back something Adam couldn't reclaim. She made sure for the first time his name wasn't the only one spoken in that room. Hers was too. and it rang out like a crack in glass that had stayed whole for far too long. The headline was quiet. Woman testifies in Missouri case involving alleged dating app predator. It didn't scream. It didn't accuse. It didn't say Adam Rafe. Just alleged. Just app. Just predator. But it was enough, because by the end of the day, it had been shared over 10,000 times. By nightfall, 3 more women had contacted the DA's office. Each story carried the same blueprint, different name. Same voice, same apartment scent, same feeling of something taken without a word. One of them, a nurse named Katrina, remembered waking up with her shoes placed neatly by the door, her lipstick wiped clean, her phone fully charged. She thought maybe it was a dream, until she saw a single word he'd left in her notes app, still. The news started calling it the consent gap case. Some commentators rolled their eyes. Where's the crime, they asked. He didn't drug anyone. He didn't leave marks. He didn't even lie about his apartment. But others, survivors, psychologists, trauma experts, started speaking up. They explained that psychological violation is still violation. That freezing isn't passivity, it's protection. That the absence of a scream isn't consent, but often the result of fear before fear has a name. Social media split in half. One side called Maya and the others attention seekers. The other started tagging every dating app with, "What are you doing to protect us?" But Maya didn't read the comments. She spent that week helping Elise write her statement. Elise never thought she'd testify. But after hearing Maya say, "I didn't scream because I didn't know I could," Elise realized she'd been waiting for permission. And now, she didn't need it anymore. When Elise took the stand, she didn't tremble. She read every word deliberately, like each sentence was a rung on a ladder out of a pit she didn't know she'd been in. She said, "He didn't drag me, he didn't hit me, he just stepped into a space I didn't know I had to guard. He took my silence and treated it like an invitation. And then he left, like nothing happened." But something did happen. And it stayed with me. Long after I stopped blaming myself. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Microphones tilted. Cameras flashed. But Elise didn't talk to them. She just walked past. One hand in her coat pocket, clutching a copy of her own testimony. One line circled in red ink. "You don't have to fight to be a victim. You just have to survive what no one warned you was coming." The legal system wasn't built for this. No bruises to point to. No broken locks. No recorded screams. Just voices steady now saying, something happened. And I wasn't allowed to call it violence, because I was still breathing when it was over. Behind closed doors, the prosecution team debated strategy. The defense leaned on one phrase, lack of physical coercion. They repeated it like a mantra, as if saying it enough would erase the memory of Maya's fractured voice when she said, "I disappeared." And he kept going. The DA's office brought in an expert witness, a trauma psychologist who'd spent 10 years studying tonic immobility, the body's neurological freeze response. She told the jury, "What we're seeing here isn't a lack of resistance. It's a collapse of survival instinct." These women didn't say no because their bodies never got the signal that saying anything would work. The courtroom shifted again. Slow, uncomfortable. Some jurors looked at Adam differently. Maybe this wasn't about proving evil, but recognizing a cold kind of intelligence designed to slip through the law like fog under a door. Meanwhile, the dating app companies issued statements. Generic, cautious, sanitized. "We take user safety seriously. Our moderation systems are under review. Users are reminded to report suspicious behavior." None of them mentioned Adam's name, but hundreds of women online did. They posted screenshots. Blurred faces, DMs that felt off, conversations that started warm, then dissolved into silence. They started seeing the pattern not just of Adam, but of the playbook he followed, the one too many others knew too well. The court allowed 3 more women to submit testimony. Anonymous, written. Each one began the same way: I didn't report. But I remember. One of them, Tadzi, ended hers with, he knew I wouldn't fight. He banked on it, but he never counted on us talking to each other. In the jury room, they asked to review Maya's testimony, then Elise's, then the audio, twice. Harlan watched it all from the back row. He'd seen men like Adam before, but never this careful, this invisible, this quiet. He's not the monster under the bed, he'd told the DA early on. He's the one who makes the bed look safe. On the final day of arguments, the prosecutor didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for language. If the law doesn't have a word for this, let's make one now. Because harm hidden behind politeness is still harm. And then he added, these women weren't certain of what happened. They weren't certain anyone would believe it mattered. The jury deliberated at 3:12 p.m. They returned after 5 hours. Not guilty on the first charge, lacking force. The jury couldn't agree on the second. But on the third, Maya's charge, the one with the audio file, the recorded whisper, they voted guilty. Adam Rafe didn't flinch, didn't speak. But Maya did. To the press, to the court, to anyone who asked, this isn't about me. This is about every woman who left a room feeling like she couldn't prove what was taken. But now we can name it. And that's the start of justice, even if it comes slow. Adam Rafe was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Not for assault, not for battery, but for manipulative exploitation, resulting in psychological and emotional harm. A legal compromise. A new charge barely tested in court, crafted like a bespoke glove to fit the shape of a crime that left no fingerprints. It wasn't the justice people expected, but it was a start. Reporters flooded the courthouse on sentencing day. Some called it a milestone, others called it a performance. But Maya didn't talk to any of them. She walked quietly out of the building coat collar, upholding a folded piece of paper in her palm. Not from a lawyer, not from a journalist, not even from a friend. It was from a woman who'd sat in the back of the courtroom, someone Maya didn't know. Written in block letters. He did the same to me in 2019. I didn't think anyone would ever say it out loud. That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table staring at a cold cup of tea. 6 years. She thought of all the other women, the ones who didn't testify, the ones without recordings, the ones who walked home feeling like ghosts in their own skin, believing they'd overreacted or worse, were responsible. A podcast aired that same week, The Trouble with John When Consent is Compromised. It didn't name Adam, but it didn't have to. The story was bigger now, about the language missing from police reports, about women who froze instead of fought, about systems that only recognized pain when it bled. Within a month, 2 more states introduced bills pushing to expand the definition of consent. Not just no means no, not just yes means yes, but conscious, unmanipulated, coherent participation. The laws stalled in committee, but the conversation didn't. Maya kept her job, went back to yoga, started therapy again. But she also started writing, not a memoir, just letters to women she'd never met, stacked in a box under her bed, each addressed the same way to the woman who left the apartment blaming herself. At the final hearing, Adam said nothing, but Maya did. She stood in the victim impact circle, a thin strip of tape on the floor, and said, "He studied us like we were equations, but he missed one variable." She paused. That we could talk to each other. The judge didn't smile, but the court clerk did. Just once. Enough. And when Maya left the building for the last time, she didn't look back. Not because she was done, but because it was someone else's turn to speak now, and she knew they would. The internet had once shielded Adam Rafe. It gave him thousands of names, hundreds of fresh starts, endless silence behind every unreported swipe. But now it turned on him. After the verdict, a survivor-run website launched quietly. No ads, no donation buttons, no press releases, just a deep blue homepage and a single sentence: "We remember what you thought we'd forget." It was called stillhere.org. Only anonymous posts. Each story vetted by trauma counselors and legal advisors. Each name redacted, but each detail vivid. They didn't name Adam, not directly, but the stories, they matched. Close enough that they recognized each other. The wine, the softly lit apartments, the feeling of being emotionally stripped bare before anyone made a move. A pattern once whispered in bathrooms and group chats was now online, visible, searchable, undeniable. Within weeks, the site had over 80,000 views. Not just from survivors, but from lawmakers, investigators, therapists using the case as a new framework in their work. A quiet revolution was forming. Not loud, not angry, just precise. A generation of women asking, what if we didn't overreact? What if we were trained to underreact? Elise joined the project team. Becca did too. They didn't call themselves activists. They called themselves witnesses. And they believed being a witness didn't just mean remembering. It meant refusing to stay silent when this happened to you too. Meanwhile, Adam sat in a federal facility in Illinois. 6 years. No media access. No interviews. No name in the prison directory, part of protective custody protocol used for high-risk inmates. But every now and then, someone tried. A letter sent. A podcast request. A blog post titled, "Where is Adam Rafe Now?" The answer exactly where he feared most. Not in prison, but in memory, in conversation. He'd spent years ensuring women didn't talk to each other. Now they weren't just talking. They were building an archive, and in that archive he no longer had control. He was just a case file, a whisper given shape, a predator caught not by handcuffs but by stories that refused to stay buried. Maya read every entry on stillhere.org. She never commented, never liked a post. But each time she closed the browser, she whispered the same thing: you were right to feel afraid. And you're not alone. One night a new entry appeared. Anonymous? 3 sentences. He told me I was safe, that no one had ever said no to him before. So I didn't say no either. Maya read it twice, then opened a new document, typed 4 words, the same 4 words she'd written the first day she decided to testify, speak it out loud. And then she hit publish. Healing didn't come like a movie ending. It came in pieces, out of order, quiet. For Maya, it started the night she replied to a message from a stranger. No profile picture, just a name S. The message read, "I saw you speak. I couldn't breathe through your testimony. You said everything I didn't have words for. Thank you." Maya stared at the message for nearly 20 minutes before replying, "You don't have to say anything. I already believe you." For Elise, healing came in an even smaller way. She went on a date. Not because she was ready, not because she trusted, but because she refused to let fear decide what her future looked like. She met the guy at a coffee shop, kept her keys looped through her fingers, shared her location with 3 friends, and halfway through, when he reached for her hand, she pulled back and said, "I don't move fast. I don't owe anyone comfort, and if you don't get that, we're done." He nodded. didn't flinch. And for the first time in months, Elise left somewhere without questioning her own instincts. Meanwhile, Maya started attending a women's support group. She didn't speak for the first 3 sessions, just listened, took notes. Not about trauma, but about language. Words that didn't feel revolutionary but were, I froze. I thought it was my fault. I didn't say no, but I never said yes. I left my body. He never noticed. One night, a new woman joined the group. She didn't give her name, but her voice shook as she whispered, I told myself letting him in wasn't a crime, but I didn't invite what happened next. No one offered advice, just silence and space. The kind of silence that doesn't echo, it holds. Still, Unheard.org released a short video that month. It wasn't an exposé, no faces, no backstories, just phrases on a black screen. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't even know what to call it. But it happened. The final line read, and I'm still here. The video went viral, not because it was loud, but because it whispered what millions hadn't heard, you're not crazy, you were cornered, and you survived. Maya didn't watch the video right away. She was folding laundry, muttering to herself when her phone pinged with a text from Elise. We're not done, but we're further than we've ever been. She smiled, folded another towel, let herself breathe without counting. Healing didn't erase the past, but it changed the shape of what came next. Because when you name a ghost, it can't haunt you the same way anymore. And when you share that name, sometimes, it disappears. The change didn't start with the law. It started with an email. A junior employee at a mid-tier tech company, one that ran 6 dating apps under different names, forwarded a flagged article to her boss. The subject line read, We're about to be this. Attached was a news brief on the Rafe trial. The headline, Victims Say Tech Platforms Enabled Coercion by Design. Within weeks, the message reached the boardroom, not because anyone cared, but because someone realized if enough women stop swiping, the algorithm stops grabbing attention. At stillhere.org, submissions tripled. Some came from users who weren't harmed, just unsettled. A conversation that felt off. A silence that came too fast. A glass of wine that didn't taste right. Others came from developers, designers, content moderators who said, we knew. We saw the patterns, but reporting it meant asking what our platform really was. One whistleblower came forward from a major dating app. She leaked internal data showing repeated reports about the same user were often buried unless police got involved. Even when 5, 6, 7 women flagged a profile, nothing happened, because silence didn't create liability until it went public. Then things started moving slowly, messily, but undeniably. Some apps introduced new prompts. Do you feel safe? Did this date go as expected? Would you meet this person again? Simple, gentle. But for some, it was the first time anyone asked. Others weren't ready to change. One company issued a statement. We can't police human behavior. Users are responsible for their own safety. Still here. Org responded with a headline of its own. That's what he said too. It went viral in under 24 hours. Meanwhile, Maya was invited to speak at a digital ethics conference. She almost declined, but Elise told her they let him talk for years. It's time to balance the record. So she took the stage, no slides, no podium, and spoke for 12 minutes. Not about Adam, not about trauma, but about design. These platforms are built to optimize connection, but connection without safety is just exposure. She ended with a question. What if we built an app where women didn't have to learn self-defense just to swipe? As she stepped off the stage, a man in a navy blazer shook her hand. He didn't introduce himself, But days later, Maya received a grant proposal in her inbox funding to design a prototype. Built by survivors, tested by therapists, with a button labeled not just unmatch, but unease. The change didn't come like a revolution. It came in beta. But it was real. And for the first time, the people who'd coded silence into the system were asked, "What did you know and when did you decide it wasn't your problem?" The platform launched quietly, no press release, no marketing campaign, just a single line on the homepage. Not everything real starts with a swipe. It was called Kindred, not a dating app, not a trauma support network, something in between. A space where matches weren't based on proximity or attraction, but on pace, comfort, and clarity. Profiles didn't list hobbies first. They listed boundaries. What makes you feel safe? What does unease look like to you? What are you not here for? And instead of a heart icon, the default response was a pause. Want to read more before messaging? Kindred didn't go viral. It grew slowly, almost imperceptibly, but something about it felt right, like trust being rebuilt without rushing. Maya didn't run the company. She didn't want to, but she sat on the board and helped write the language guidelines. Don't call it reporting, call it reflecting. Don't rate dates. Let users describe moments. Don't reward engagement. Reward honesty. Elise signed up for the beta. She matched with someone who didn't ask for a photo first. Their first conversation lasted 4 days, mostly about childhood. One message an hour. No punctuation at first, just permission to breathe. Adam Rafe remained in federal custody. His appeal was denied. He was offered parole on the condition he register under a new legal category, deliberate psychological coercion, with predatory intent. He refused. Not because he denied the charges, but because even now he couldn't bear admitting that the silence had finally spoken. Stillhere.org added a new feature. Letters you never sent. Anonymous entries. Messages never delivered. Words typed into a browser window at 2:14 a.m., then posted without a name. Some read like angry songs, others like eulogies. But just a few, ended like this. You didn't break me. You just paused me. And now I'm hitting play. Maya never wrote one. But she read them often. And sometimes she closed her laptop and stepped outside. Just to feel the air, the quiet, the absolute normalcy of being safe in her own skin. Not perfect, not healed, but whole in progress. And when she got a message from a woman named Nora who just remembered what she'd tried to forget for 5 years, Maya replied simply, "Start where you're standing. Speak when you're ready. I'll still be here." Because in the end, it wasn't about erasing Adam. It was about ensuring his silence would never go unchallenged again. She didn't scream. She didn't run. But the silence she carried was louder than any alarm, because it echoed. Through inboxes, through courtrooms, through the space between one woman asking, "Did this happen to you too?" and another answering, "I didn't have the words until now." This isn't a story about a monster. This is a story about a system that taught us to only believe in monsters with teeth, not the ones who know how to smile. Not the ones who know how to listen. Not the ones who wait for you to fall apart and then step through like they were invited. Adam Rafe built his world on women blaming themselves. But he forgot guilt stays quiet until it meets someone else's memory. Then it becomes a pattern, a map, a voice that doesn't just remember, it warns. And if you're hearing this, really hearing it, you already know this story doesn't end with a prison sentence. It ends with a woman somewhere right now unlocking her phone, scrolling past delete match, and pausing because something feels wrong, something she can't explain. Not yet. If this story moved, you share it. And if you've ever felt what happened to you wasn't bad enough to report, we're listening. Leave a comment. You're not alone. Because the question isn't how he got in. It's how many people were standing there when she tried to get out.